Ricky DeLuna. I started off with the Red Sox working at a low A affiliate, it's a minor league club. And then over the years, my role has evolved to being a coordinator for our Dominican Republic Academy and then overseeing development for our rookies. These past 2 years, it's evolved towards me having more of a speed research position where I would row the Major League Club all the way down to our minor league affiliates and make sure speed research is progressing and everything that we're needing to integrate with the skill side is in place. So a lot of what my job or role consisted of these past 2 years is making sure there's integration with the weight room, speed development, and then skills. So bridging the gap with S&C and then our skills department. And so just making sure what we're trying to achieve when it comes to base running and defense was working. And so for that to happen, like we need to have objective measurements to show progress. And with that, obviously you need to present material to the front office and then to the skills coaches. So there's buy-in and then the players are, well, most importantly, the players are bought in. And so that's where a lot of the reports that we were able to generate with VueMotion came into play is by providing something visual for front office, skills coaches, and then most importantly, the players. Yeah, very unique to the Red Sox. The only position that exists in professional baseball where an S&C coach is specialized in speed. And then for speed research to happen, that's where a lot of my conversations happen with the analytics department to see what is data telling us. It's helpful to like get guys to get stronger and faster, but at some point there's limitations with force plates and a lot of these other tools can give you from the weight room. And for you to see transference, you need to have a bridge from all these tools that measure strength qualities in the weight room to, all right, is speed being expressed outside? And then now we have somebody that talks to analytics to see, well, is this transferring into the game? And for all of these conversations that happen, it's a little challenging. It's tough when you work primarily with the S&C. Like you need to have an S&C coach that has some flexibility to step outside into other departments and have more conversations with them. And that's where not only was I having conversations with the skills when it came to base running or defense, but analytics. Now I'm having conversations with what is the game data telling us and what do we need to do to improve as an organization. You may see somebody getting faster when it comes to linear movement, but it doesn't always mean that they're expressing that in the game. And that's where analytics comes into play. Because this role is very unique, very new, like there's a lot of trial. Well, what system do we have and how will this be efficient? And so early on, I found myself using VueMotion to look at just sprint mechanics. As we progressed towards mid-season and the end of the season, I found myself working with analytics to reverse engineer. Like, well, what is game data telling us that we need to do better at as a team? Like, is it base running advancement or is it base stealing? And then based off that information, let's say there's an individual athlete that is great with base running advancement, which is your ability to advance from one base to the next. For instance, being able to run from first to third or second to home, just being able to advance. Let's say there's an athlete that is crushing it, has greats when it comes to base running advancement. However, his base stealing is his limiting factor. His base stealing is what is keeping his base running value low. And now that I have that information from analytics, I reverse engineer and now look at first step or initial acceleration mechanics. So for me to understand like how far they're projecting each step, the angles they're running out of, like all these qualities that we see from the speed or sprint coach lens, I'm able to look at objective measures with VueMotion. And so with VueMotion now, it's a matter of, all right, well, how's that first step being executed? Are they extending that very first step prematurely? Are they using the whole flexion to extend out to project the body forward more efficiently? Like all these things that can be a little hard to see without a report can sometimes be missed. And if you're just using timing gates, then you're just looking at an end result without actually looking at how they got that end result. And so yeah, to sum it up, I found myself now talking to analytics to look at what part of the game are these guys limited at when it comes to speed. And then I look at what phase of a sprint that game is limited at. Is it top speeds, is it max velocities, or is it acceleration? And so based off of where they're limited, and in this case base stealing, well, I look at how they're accelerating and then look at, well, what's limited? Are they asymmetrical when it comes to projecting left versus right? And are they limited hip extension? And now that I have something that gives me those measurables, something that's objectified, now I know with more confidence what I need to do from an S&C standpoint, like in the weight room, or with our medical department, our ATs. Like we need to try to get this guy more range with his left hip versus right, because this is what we're seeing that he's limited on. And you could always confirm that too with game data or game footage, right? So it's, hey, like this is what we're seeing on VueMotion, but is that what's happening in the game? Well, let's confirm and look at game footages and see if that is in fact happening. And then over time, like as you see all these qualities improve with his VueMotion reports, we also can track his game footages and see if he's expressing that in the game as well. In this era, like you have anything that can be measured in the game. The times it takes him to get to second, times it takes him to get certain distances between first and second. So you can confirm with VueMotion and then game footages that there is transference happening. I say this with high confidence because I've been able to see it. Even your major league veterans, most are able to get up to the major league levels because of how good they hit, and then their ability to just read the ball off the bat. So they're able to make defensive plays, but very few have actually had really good individualized speed work. And even more so with the information that we have now, like you're able to see, like, is he limited with his first step or within his first 10 feet base stealing? And if game data or analytics tells you, yes, he is, he's below average with his first step or what happens within the first 10 feet his base steal, then that's where I come in and I bring out a microscope, if you will, like where I now ask our tech guys, our technology guys, like, hey, can we set up videos from first to second, and so we can get the back view of base steal? And so now, depending on the routes that he's taking, if he's taking routes where he's pushing towards the mound rather than running straight to second, then I know like there's either two things that are going on. Like he doesn't have awareness that he's projecting his body towards the mound instead of second, or his route is more efficient, or he's limited with tip IR on his right leg, his lead leg. If he likes IR, then he's gonna push into the ground stuck in ER, and that's gonna push him towards the mound rather towards second.
Right.
And so having all this information and then having the technology, in this case the videos, to show me the route he's taking to get to second, well, I now can confirm that with VueMotion too. Like, hey, if his first step into the ground is more efficient, then he's able to project his body more linearly rather than laterally. But you won't be able to see that until you actually get all this data. Analytics telling you that he's limited with his first step, and then VueMotion to confirm that, hey, now that he has hip IR on his lead leg, his right leg, he's now projecting his body further with that step than he was initially before he actually worked on the hip IR. And so now you have confirmation from so many different angles. You got confirmation from VueMotion that's showing you that his lead leg, that leg that's doing the file step, is projecting his body towards second further because he has more IR to use. That's one angle that you can confirm. Analytics to tell you, hey, his times to get to 10 feet with the steal are improving. Now he's at average or above average professional baseball. And then the video footage that you set up from first to second showing you that route efficiency is, like, you have a visual that shows that he is moving. So you have three different angles that you could confirm that your work is helping the athlete and therefore improving performance. And so one of those three ways to measure improvement, the player is gonna buy in on one of those. So I don't know, the more information that you have that's digestible and you could relay that over to the players or the skills coaches, the better, you're just in a better position as a coach to have an impact. And that's an actual case, an example of how a major league veteran can get better, is with those very small details that he's never previously worked on in his life. And so now you have all these other players that are listening to these conversations, and you got people that are coming up and asking, hey man, I'm interested to start this process. Can you check me out? And then before you know it, you have people asking to get assessed when it comes to their sprint performance, when it comes to base stealing. So yeah, a lot of different ways that you could use technology and data, but most importantly is, like, is it improving performance? If so, prove it and then show the player that it's working. Approach is communicating to the player and the language he understands the most, which is baseball. And so players understand they're performing with base running, whether it's base running advancement or base stealing, or they understand their defensive grades. Like, how are they as defensive players? And I'll give you an example of outfield. So with outfields, you can look at how good they are at running based off of data that's collected from Hawkeye or StatCast. StatCast is, or Hawkeye is just, you have so many different cameras located around the stadium that track and give you how fast they're moving, how just the velocities that they're moving, right? And so with outfielders, there's a very important defensive grade for outfielders called the outfield jump. And jump is something that you can even go in for yourself on the internet. You can go to statcast.com and then look at all these qualities that are given to you that give these guys defensive grade. And so what jump consists of is there's three components of a jump. It's reaction, burst, and route. And all three of those combined give you a jump grade, which is the most important defensive grade for outfielders. And so each three of those segments that give you a jump grade are all trainable, right? And so if I look at an outfield's defensive grade and I look at their jump and it's 4, that's like the best thing you could have, because you have a baseline that you could show the players if they're working on improving. That's directly impact their game and therefore their value. And so those three components of jump, you got reaction, and it's how much feet can you cover. Doesn't matter the direction, just how much feet can you cover in 1.5 seconds. So your ability just to like move and the distance you're able to cover in 1.5 seconds. Burst is now like what we consider transition or late acceleration, and that's the feet covered from 1.6 to 3 seconds. So what jump is how much distance are you covering in 3 seconds, but within those 3 seconds, it's broken into further parts, right? So jump, any distance you cover in any direction in 3 seconds. The reaction is what you do in the first half, and then the burst is what you do in the second half of the 3 seconds, right? And so you got reaction, you got burst, and then lastly is the route. Like, is the route directly to the ball, right? It could be a route away from the ball, and now it's an inefficient route. And so when we look at those 3 segments of the jump, all right, is it initial acceleration that we need to work on? Is it the burst, or is it the route? Reaction, burst, route give you the jump grade. So is it reaction? If it is, then let's look at reaction that VueMotion give you. Is it burst? Well, let's look at something that gives you more of that transition into max velocity. Or is it route? If it's route, then he may not be reading correctly. It may be more of a vestibular thing. So for us to improve their speed, it's not necessarily a measurable. It's not something that you could actually work with speed drills. It's a vestibular thing. He could run fast speeds, but he's not running it in a good route, something that mimics. And so I would go to an outfielder, look at his defensive grades, and if his defensive grades are low or below average, I'm able to communicate that with his jumping grade. And those are three segments that are broken into reaction, burst, and route. Out of those 3 segments, each one is a trainable thing, and VueMotion could be used to look how he's taking his first step. Burst could use VueMotion to use burst, which is like late acceleration. And then route is something you can get creative with VueMotion and use route. And the way you can do that is have a player sprint, but not look at the direction he's running. Because there's a difference between running the direction that you always look at, which is what we're all familiar with, but running that same intensity while looking at a different direction, which is what you have to do as an outfielder. And so can he replicate those good shapes and patterns when he's looking at a different direction is something that you could improve, because again, route could sometimes be affected by your inability running with good mechanics while looking at different directions. And so that's where we've had an opportunity to explore different areas that we could help players, especially at this level of major league. Everyone's really good. They're the world's best baseball players, that any little small thing could help them improve. And we've been able to use GPS to show how much slower these guys run when they're looking a different direction compared to where they run. So yeah, kind of a long-winded answer there, but an outfield would be a good example of somebody that you could communicate with, looking at outfield jump, and then you break that down. And then if one of those 3 areas are limited, there's a way that you can measure that with VueMotion. Off season and then spring training, we use that time to really hit sprint mechanics hard. That's our opportunity to like prioritize that. And then as we get closer to the season, like it becomes more skills and less development. And so we take a lot of pride in this, because we, as an organization, like even our skills coaches like understand kinograms, the concept of kinograms, and then how to use kinograms. And then with VueMotion, you're able to use, it breaks down kinograms for you. You save a lot of time, and you can use more of that time to go talk to players rather than like chopping up the frame kilograms to put together, right? So like if you've coached sprints, then I'm sure you understand like how long it can take to build a kilogram. And with VueMotion just doing that for you, like you have a lot more time and energy that you could give to the players to communicate the work that we want to do, right? So with the org, what we've been able to do is we have kinograms that are built out across the orgs, especially with the players that are interested. And then if there's the skills coaches like really want to like prioritize and make sure that these guys are getting better because there's a lot of stake or there's a lot of investment into this player, then like those guys we definitely use VueMotion for. And so when we use VueMotion, like and talk about projection angles, like max vertical projection, like all these that we look at as a sprints coach, you will see that when you communicate these kinograms to players with VueMotion, it has objective measurables. The players around, like the clubhouse, listen to that. They hear that and they see something that is visually friendly, and they happens every time at all our affiliates and even at the major league club where we break down a kilogram and we look at the distances, we look at the ground contact times, we look at all of these qualities, and you'll have players that stop if they're walking from the weight room to the locker room or vice versa. Like they'll stop and look over our shoulders to look at what we're talking about on the screen. To them, they like numbers. A lot of these guys are video game guys. They like to compare, and numbers for them is something that's easy just to improve. It's a game for them. And so what we've had is, okay, if guys are interested, we'll have VueMotion used with them. Also, we'll have like our assistant coaches build kinograms just to get familiarized with shapes. But the guys at the skills coaches, the players at the skills coaches like wanted to prioritize, like, hey, this guy needs to get better defensively or base running. Those guys definitely we use VueMotion with. And then the end product of VueMotion, like we use that to explain and educate player. I mean, as well as the players. Like you'll have people that come in and ask, like, hey, like, what does that mean? Matter of fact, can you do that with me? Like, can we do that? That's how it ended up unfolding to a larger scale. Is like we had players that would overhear and then they'd walk by and then they ask, hey, can we do this on my next speed day? You got a lineup of people that want this done. And now you show them numbers and it's a game to them now. Now the game is improving mechanics, which as an S&C coach, like that, dude, that is the best buy-in you could have. And so now that you could put measurables of their sprint mechanics and you could gamify it, they now have motivation to improve mechanics. So we talk about how can we give motivation in the weight room? Like how can we provide like drive, like with velocity based training? But we found ourselves using VueMotion as a way to gamify their mechanics. And now they're wondering like, hey, like, are these good shapes? Are my heels below my thighs? Am I overstriding still? Like, well, I don't know. Let's look at your VueMotion. We'll look at it tomorrow morning once the report's generated. And now you have a player walking in the morning, knocking on the door, asking, hey, can we go over my shapes? And you just gamified sprint mechanics to a whole organization. It is becoming a staple, and I feel that because our organization really valued B development, we did have an advantage over other organizations when it came to running related injuries and improving base running value and defensive grades. Players do understand because of so many conversations and lectures that we do have with them. Like we would have what's known as a speed lab where we use almost a whole cage to work on footwork, sprint mechanics, change of direction. Where we set up a screen to talk over topics relating to athleticism, speed work, and how or why the weight room is relevant. And so because there's grades that these players receive, like defensive grades, base running grades, they know that for those grades to improve, they need to interact with the ground more efficiently and they need to be moving their limbs in the air more efficiently. They know that those things need to happen. And for those things to happen, like there needs to be emphasis on. And so you never see defensive grades improve consistently, like long term with poor mechanics, but you will always see defensive grades improve consistently throughout the season with better mechanics. And to us, that's basic physics. Like their moment arms are being created how they should be. Long moment arms when they're about to make impact to the ground, short moment arms as their foot's coming up in the air, and that creates efficient cycles. And so with efficient cycles, now you have, for instance, what I just talked about with outfield grades, like the outfield jump. Now you have better reaction times, you have better first times, and now their defensive grades have improved. So the players understand that with better leverages and better foot ground interactions, like their mechanic, that will always result into better defensive grades or base running value. I can confidently speak on the behalf of professional baseball. I know there's other sports that have been ahead on speed development, but when it comes to communicating to our players what exactly they need to do to improve speed, like we need to simplify it. It needs to be very digestible because you got to take into consideration that these baseball players have so much other data. There's so much noise pollution when it comes to baseball, and their money, I don't know, I'll be a little biased and I'll make an argument on, yeah, your money's made on the mound or in the box when you're hitting or when you're pitching, but you got to be healthy to be in that box or on the mound longer. And so everything that happens outside of that box or outside of the mound is a step after a step after a step. And for you to get from point A to point B safer and more efficiently, like you need to produce good shapes and you need to produce good patterns. And so now the question comes up, well, what is a shape and what are the patterns? And the way I've always communicated that to players is like a shape is just a screenshot of a specific figures that your arms and legs create. And so with our organization or with the Red Sox, like players, all position players to Major League down understand the frames. Like they understand what figures should be happening within each frame of a kilogram. And so a shape is a screenshot of figures within frames. And so there's what we communicate to our players, like KPI positions, or just like key positions that you need to be in, and you need to know what those positions feel like. And so that's where like our switches or our marches come in, and it's like, hey, like make a mental note of the shape. Okay, now that we got the shape understood, we need to learn and feel or what it is to get from one shape to the next shape, or to go from one cycle to the next cycle. And so the way it's communicated and the way that players, or we've had success with players, is shapes are screenshots of figures. Patterns are how you get from one pattern or from one shape to the next shape. So, and that's what we would do is we help the guys understand good shapes. Those that really understand like the Altus methodologies, the Altus way of improving speed, like you got your switches or your marches, then you got your dribbles. Your dribbles, that helps players understand good patterns. And so now you got two sets of drills categorized. You got shapes that you could help players understand with your marches and your switches. And then you got your dribbles that can help players understand the feeling of those patterns. And so when you break it down or simplify it for the players where it's digestible, it's really easy just to break down shapes. What are they? Patterns. What do they feel like? And now you got two drills that help with those categories, shapes, patterns.